Dmitri Shostakovich will go down in history as the man that created Joseph Stalin's soundtrack, but the two men have a complicated relationship, as is almost always the case with anyone and the mischievous, murderous tyrant of the USSR. Stalin alternates between praise and a personal dislike to his work. As a result, Shostakovich is both an instrument and a victim of the Soviet propaganda machine. In 1942, he is not in Stalin's favor since some time, but at the height of the siege of Leningrad, he's on the cusp of soundtracking both the Soviet people's resistance to the Nazi invasion and Stalin himself. I'm Spartacus Olsson. Welcome to the first of 3 extra bio episodes that have been chosen by you in a viewer's poll. This one is Dmitri Dimitrijevic Shostakovich. Shostakovich is born in St. Petersburg on September 25th, 1906, into a musical family. His mother is an accomplished pianist and his father a keen singer. And young Dimitri's childhood is filled with trips to the opera and concerts at the family home. He's introduced to the piano by his mother at the age of 8, displaying an exceptional talent from the start. Shostakovich's comfortable middle-class life becomes somewhat less comfortable after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. They lose their servants, their dacha, and suffer food shortages along with everyone else. But they still manage to enroll Dmitri at the newly renamed Petrograd Conservatory in 1919 to study piano and composition. Here, he becomes a diligent and impressive student, greatly respected by his teachers. Already his graduation piece, performed publicly in May 1926, his first symphony, catapults him into the center of the world of music and into the eyes of the ruling Communist Party. Reviews of the symphony are mixed, but critics are still impressed by the 19-year-old's potential. Over the next 2 years, it receives European and American premieres in Berlin and Philadelphia. Shostakovich's newfound fame and skills at the piano wins him a part in the International Chopin competition in Warsaw, scheduled for January 1927. Stalin, always smarting from the Soviet defeat in the Polish-Soviet War in 1921, is keen for the Soviet Union to win. All performers are vetted and approved at the highest levels before traveling abroad. This is probably when Stalin first becomes personally aware of Shostakovich. But in December 1926, Shostakovich fails his exam in Marxist theory, a newly introduced graduation requirement at the conservatory. Despite expressing support for communism in his letters to his girlfriend Tanya, he is on the whole removed from politics, hardly mentioning such matters in his letters to musical correspondents. He is worried that this failure will prevent him from traveling, but then passes the test on the second run. He goes on to finish outside of the medals in Warsaw, but receives a great deal of positive press and public attention, and is invited to perform in the city in February, which raises his standing further. It is not long before Shostakovich receives his first state commission. In March 1927, the state publishing house invites him to produce a symphony honoring the 10th anniversary of the revolution. Shostakovich relishes this musical challenge. In keeping with the proletarian theme, he is particularly excited to experiment with employing factory whistles in his composition. He is far less interested in the ideological underpinnings and is particularly scathing towards the lyrical quality of the revolutionary poetry he has to use for the choral section. Still, the completed Second Symphony receives critical acclaim when it premieres in November. Shostakovich's own opinion never changes, though. He will always believe it to be completely unsatisfactory. Shostakovich now turns his attention to opera. His first opera is a critical flop, but he has high hopes for his second. He begins working on Lady Macbeth of the Mtsensk district in 1930, a tragic, satirical opera in which a bored and unfulfilled provincial housewife murders her husband and father-in-law in concert with her lover. Lady Macbeth causes something of a scandal when it debuts in January 1934. The opera deviates sharply from socialist realism, the ideologically prescribed style under Stalin. Art is supposed to portray scenes of everyday life, supposedly relevant to the workers and to reflect well on life in the Soviet Union. With its outlandish storyline and dark themes of murder and infidelity that come together in an anticlimactic murder-suicide at the finale, Lady Macbeth clearly runs afoul of these principles. Critics pick up on the lurid nature of the show, yet it is a smash hit with audiences and goes on to run successfully for 2 years. In fact, it does so well that Stalin himself wants to see what the fuss is all about. He decides to attend a performance at the Bolshoi Theater on the evening of January 26, 1936. Shostakovich is in attendance. Casting a sidelong glance at the VIP box, he witnesses the great dictator grimacing under the force of the woodwind and brass sections. Worse is to come. During one of the opera's sex scenes, Stalin apparently laughs out loud. Eyewitnesses describe Shostakovich emerging white as a sheet for his curtain call, only to see that Stalin and his entourage have already walked out. 2 days later, the party mouthpiece Pravda savages the opera in a review titled Muddle instead of Music. The composer apparently never considered the problem of what the Soviet audience looks for and expects in music. He ignored the demand of Soviet culture that all coarseness and savagery be abolished from every corner of Soviet life. Lady Macbeth is having great success with bourgeois audiences abroad. Is it not because the opera is non-political and confusing that they praise it? Is it not explained by the fact that it tickles the perverted taste of the bourgeois with its fidgety, neurotic music? With this public denunciation, Shostakovich's position becomes precarious, to say the least. Remember that this is all occurring in the context of the Great Terror, and it hits very close to home for him. In the spring of 1937, Shostakovich's brother-in-law is arrested as a member of a terrorist organization. His sister and mother-in-law are deported shortly after. Shostakovich keeps a bag packed ready for his own arrest by the NKVD. Keeping a low profile, Shostakovich rushes the completion of his Fifth Symphony. In response to Pravda's words, the Fifth is traditional and accessible. Shostakovich's program notes, stating that it is a constructive answer by a Soviet artist to just criticism. It premieres in November 1937 and is a huge success. Commentators hail it as a return to form, and Shostakovich is back in favor. With this rehabilitation, he is once again commissioned to work for the party. In November 1939, he is asked to produce a triumphant piece to celebrate the Red Army's victory in Finland. Of course, events do not unfold as the Kremlin desires, and the composition is shelved. Shostakovich will never claim credit for this work. Like many Soviet citizens, his life is forever changed by the German invasion of June 22, 1941. We've already seen that Shostakovich is by no means an ideologically keen Soviet, but he is without a doubt a patriot. He writes to a friend in July, "I'm going to defend my country, and am prepared, sparing neither life nor strength, to carry out any mission I am assigned." Ready to stay and defend Leningrad, he volunteers to the Red Army, but is rejected due to his poor eyesight. He spends a few weeks helping to build defensive positions around the city before moving to the Fire Brigade. There, he is given a role protecting the roof of the Leningrad Conservatory from firebombs. His service on the roof is more of a propaganda opportunity than anything else. Stalin instructs local officials to keep celebrities such as Shostakovich safe. Therefore, he never comes face to face with any blazes, but photos of the great composer in his uniform are beamed around the world. More significant than his nominal responsibility on the conservatory roof is his work on the Seventh Symphony. We don't exactly know when he begins work on it, or even if it was initially intended to be a direct response to the German invasion, but we do know that by mid-July 1941, he is so engrossed in its work that he brings his materials up to the roof of the conservatory while on fire duty. He is undoubtedly driven by his pride in the citizens of Leningrad he sees beneath him going to work every day. He will recall in later years, "War was all around. I had to be together with the people. I wanted to create the image of our embattled country, to engrave it in music." He is so proud that he spurns offers of evacuation even as the German advance comes closer and closer. His colleagues from the Conservatory and Composers Union leave, and his wife Nina tries to convince him to as well. But he sees it as a point of pride to stay for as long as possible. On August 31st, the last rail link to Leningrad is severed and the last road is cut on September 8th. Along with 2.5 million others, the Shostakoviches are trapped. German air raids destroy the city's food warehouses, and by mid-September, Leningrad begins to starve. Despite the hardship, Shostakovich keeps working on his symphony. His wife Nina will later recall. Even during air raids, he seldom stopped working. If things began getting too hot, he calmly finished the bar he was writing, waited until the page dried, neatly arranged what he had written, and took it down with him into the bomb shelter. But eventually, even Shostakovich realizes that he must leave the city. On October 1st, he and his family are flown from Leningrad to Moscow. After a fortnight, the family are evacuated once more as the German advance on Moscow. This time it is to Kuibyshev, arriving on October 22nd. Here, he continues working on the 7th and completes it at the end of December. It receives its Kuibyshev premiere on March 5th, 1942, and its Moscow premiere on the 29th. After months of anticipation, it is an enormous success. In Moscow, the audience is held in rapture as they listen to the finale air raid sirens burst into life. But instead of leaving, they remain to give a standing ovation to the composer. Official reception is resoundingly positive, as a Pravda review claims. Hitler did not scare Shostakovich. Shostakovich is a Russian man, and that means an angry man. And if you get him really angry, he is capable of fantastic feats. The score makes a circuitous journey from Russia through Iran to the West. There it receives premieres in London in June and New York in July. Critical reception is actually quite negative, with it seen as bombastic, lengthy, and lacking in any subtlety. The New York Herald Tribune even speculates it might disqualify him as a serious composer. Despite the negative reviews, the British and American propaganda machines present the symphony as a symbol of Western Soviet unity. A stylized image of fireman Shostakovich graces Time magazine's cover to coincide with the New York premiere, and the symphony remains very popular throughout the war. Popularity that Shostakovich dreams to be put live to the besieged people of Leningrad. Of course, holding a concert in the besieged city is easier said than done. The Philharmonic Orchestra has been evacuated. The radio orchestra has remained, but has not rehearsed since January. The final entry in their logbook reads, "Rehearsal did not take place. Srabian is dead. Petrov is sick. Borishev is dead. Orchestra not working." In defiance of these odds, an effort gets underway to gather performers from among the citizens and soldiers in Leningrad. Shostakovich has fallen in and out of the graces of the Soviet leadership again and again. But if this bombarded and starved city can perform his work, then surely he will be responsible for creating a point around which all Soviet citizens can rally in their resistance against the Nazis. It promises to be a heroic story that might even change the course of the war on the shores of Lake Ladoga. You'll have to watch our upcoming War Against Humanity episode to see how that unfolds.